Hi everyone, thanks for the opportunity to speak at this conference. My name's James Mant and this is a recording. The time difference was a bit tricky. I think it was going to be in the middle of the night for me, so I did a pre-recorded presentation for you all. I've got about 10 minutes, I'm going to rush through it pretty quickly. I've got to get through a lot in that 10 minutes. It's just about me. I work for the state government here in Victoria, in Australia, and I'm based in Melbourne, and I've been working on and lead 20-minute neighbourhoods policy and implementation for the state government. So I'm going to talk to you about that today. Just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that okay. So very briefly, 20-minute neighbourhoods is a core policy within Plan Melbourne. So it underpins that plan, and Plan Melbourne is the metropolitan strategy for Melbourne until 2050. It's the planning strategy that underpins how we settle and manage growth in Melbourne. I'll flick through this pretty quickly. So yeah, as I said, it's the plan for accommodation growth, and we like to always refer back to the UN sustainability goals, which are embedded in Plan Melbourne. It's important. This is really a global to local example of how we implement many of the sustainable development goals. So it's really important to look up and just see this as part of a global initiative. So this really explains what we mean by 20-minute neighbourhoods, and we spent a fair bit of time trying to define it. And what we really talk about is this idea of living locally, and that's giving the people the ability to access most of their daily needs within a 20-minute return walk from their home, with access to safe cycling and local public transport options. And we also developed what we call hallmarks, which are also in Plan Melbourne embedded into policy in Victoria, and that is to have safe and accessible places that are connected. And optimise active transport. We have high quality public realm and open spaces. We provide services and destinations which support that local living. We facilitate public transport access that connects people to those other higher order centres. We deliver housing and densities at a rate that makes all this viable, and we facilitate local economies. And really it translates into that 800 metre sort of catchment, which is a rough guide, because obviously there's many things that affect your ability to travel that distance, whether that be you're an older person, or you're you're disabled, or we only use it as a guide, but it's important just to show that we should be accessible. That's the main thing, accessible to those local centres. And we also have these features as well in Plan Melbourne. It's kind of, well, what should you see in your neighbourhood? And I won't go through them all, but it gives you an example of the types of things that you should have access to in your neighbourhood, whether that be local schools, community gardens, recreation, affordable housing, ability to age in place, which is really important, diversity of housing to meet the needs of lots of different types of people. All of those sorts of things are very important within your 20-minute neighbourhood, and we can use this to measure different places. So one of the things I just wanted to touch on, which I think was something that was raised as something that would be good to talk about today, we did what we call a community partnership approach, and we really wanted to talk to the community up front and not like go in with some kind of proposal or idea of what we were doing before we'd actually talk to them first. So rather than I guess what we advocate for is, rather than your prepare and consult, it was more consult first, really understand in as much detail as you could what the key issues are for the community. And we actually trialled this in 3 different neighbourhoods in Melbourne, and worked with 3 different councils in partnership with them, and we provided a grant to those councils. And we had many different events, some of which are shown there on that photo, which really just dives down into the detail of that place. We also used a tool called CrowdSpot, where you can drop pins on specific places on a map and talk about what the key thing is in that place. It might be a culturally important, or something about that place that we don't know about. It just really gave us that rich understanding of the place. We also did technical assessments, infrastructure and planning assessments, and looked at program improvements for those. But we really just, and this map really just shows an example of one of the outputs that we had, and it really showed that the community were really on board with a lot of what we were talking about, and they wanted to see a lot of the things that come with the 20-minute neighbourhood, and they want to see that those things happen. But at the same time, we have to talk about, well, you can't have those things without the population and the growth, and this is part of a story around the place growing and changing over time. So it's I guess when you talk to the community, that sometimes there's tensions around growth and density, but it's part of a bigger vision and a bigger story here, that in order to have these other things, you need to have that growth. So it made it easier to sort of discuss those things. That's not to say there's never any tension around that, because there always is, but I think it certainly helps. And what we did was we did a report for each of the three neighbourhoods, and I'll give you the link at the end of this presentation. The three different colour ones were for each of the neighbourhoods, what we found, what the community said, the process that the council used, and just information about what were the results of that work. And we also did a what I call a programme report, which is a report from the state government, sort of talking about the issues that we found during the pilot and what things we really need to focus on. And that report made 13 recommendations back to state government to say, yes, we're doing pretty well in some places, in other places we're not doing so well. What are the things that we really need to improve and change, whether that be planning controls, whether that be having new governance structures across councils, whether that be infrastructure improvements. What are the things that we really need to do to make a difference? And I guess probably one of the big conclusions from it was we need to sort of think about how we plan for places in a different way that goes beyond planning. It's actually about the place and all the things that make up that place. So it actually involves so many different parts of government and council to really think about the whole thing that makes up a place, rather than looking at it individually through planning applications or from a transport lens or whatever. So it all fits together in the puzzle, which is quite a challenge, but that was one of the main findings. The other thing that we did is we looked at greenfield, so new growth fronts in Melbourne. It's particularly an issue here with low density, poor access areas, and really we wanted to look at bringing together different, or commissioning research, but bringing it all together into what was this report, which also is available on our website, which I'll again say at the end. I don't have a lot of time, so just to quickly say that this really talks about the key issues. So not having the community infrastructure up front, that we need to really think about how we plan for these precincts, that we need to look at the social and health impacts of the model that we have at the moment in terms of sprawl and car use. But we also wanted to show how it can actually be, I guess there's a lot of benefits economically that we wanted to show in terms of if we implement 20-minute neighbours in these areas, there's a lot of benefits that come with that. So we wanted to really focus on that as well. And this report outlines those in kind of quite a user-friendly way. So COVID really has obviously put a lot of focus on this, and I know in Scotland there's been a lot of interest, and I know the government there is looking to really implement this. But it really just showed that people were living locally. We were forced to live locally here because we had a 5-kilometre radius that we were only allowed to go to. So remote working, congestion was reduced, high rates of walking, drastic reduction in public transport, and communities rediscovered their local streets and places. So really has shone a light onto this living locally. Challenges that we really are seeing are, it did highlight that some areas don't have the access that they should. So that was really interesting. Small businesses and retail shopping strips, that kind of thing, are struggling to survive. and we did see a lot of congestion in the open space trails, that kind of thing, and that there wasn't, the people noticed the fragmentation of footpaths and bike paths and that kind of thing, because there was a huge increase in people walking and cycling locally. And what we did, and I know I'm out of time here, so I'm going to have to run through this really quickly, but we are looking at actually implementing activations in the pilot neighbourhoods that I was talking about, and this is a concept plan of one of the neighbourhoods where we're trying to look at sort of closing off the street and basically advocating for funding across government to implement this. We're looking at also temporary activations in response to COVID, so things like greening, more space on the street, pop-up parks, cycling, prioritising walking, and also working locally and stimulus to help local businesses. And this just shows how we might see that implemented over time in one of the neighbourhoods. And that really is a quick whistle-stop tour in 10 minutes of what we're doing here in Melbourne, and I probably could have talked for half an hour or so, but I hope that gives people some understanding of what we're doing and is useful. And as I said, the website there is available for you to download or have a look at some of those reports, and my details are there also. So yeah, thank you, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the event. Thank you.